in the government. Trotsky did not write, Rakovsky may be charged with collaboration with the Japanese under orders from Trotsky. Trotsky did not write, perhaps this time a defendant will be forced to admit contact with high-ranking person under orders from Trotsky. Trotsky wrote that it is quite certain that between Rakovsky and the Japanese military, diplomats and military. 6 weeks later, Trotsky was even more precise, with the Japanese military chiefs in the government. How could Trotsky have been both so precise and so certain about whom Rakovsky would admit to meeting with, and at the same time have been so completely accurate? There is only one hypothesis that offers an answer to these questions, and that is consistent with Trotsky's stated practice to expose the scheme in advance. Trotsky several times said he would do this. Trotsky had to have known that Rakovsky did these things. Moreover, we also know how Trotsky knew Rakovsky would testify. Rakovsky himself had informed him. In his trial testimony, this is the third Moscow trial in 1938, Rakovsky stated, I wrote to Trotsky about all this, about my negotiations in Tokyo, about my conversations with Uraniev, about my meetings, and of course, about this last proposition. How did Rakovsky manage to write Trotsky from within the Soviet Union? According to the testimony of two defendants, Rakovsky had a way of contacting Trotsky that was special to himself. According to Yezhov's letter to Stalin of January 27, 1937, Pyatakov had testified. Concerning Rakovsky, Trotsky said that it was essential to talk with him and give him a push in his work along the lines of the Trotskyist organization. From this, I deduced that Rakovsky had some personal line of contact with Trotsky. Conclusion. What is the significance of this result? Leon Trotsky did indeed collaborate with the Nazis and Japanese. This is the only reasonable conclusion that can be drawn from the evidence. My examination of it shows that it cannot have been faked, forged, say, by Stalin or by the NKVD. The implication for our understanding of Soviet history, and indeed of world history, are vast. Briefly, here are just a few of these implications. 1. This result provides further evidence that the Moscow trials were honest trials, and that the defendants testified as they chose to testify, and that those who were adjudged to be guilty really were guilty. 2. This means there was no terror. As I show in my book, Yezhov versus Stalin, the whole concept of the Stalinist terror is bogus, an invention of Trotsky, Khrushchev, and anti-communist Western pseudo-scholars like Robert Conquest. 3. The conspiracies of the rights, Trotskyists, Zinovievites, military leaders, and fascists that were uncovered in the Moscow trials, including Trotsky's collaboration with Nazi Germany and fascist Japan, if they had been successful, planned to ally with the Nazis and Japanese against the rest of Europe. With the vast material and human resources of the Soviet Union, Hitler and the Japanese would have been far more powerful. Hitler could have invaded England, as he planned to do. In the Pacific, Japan would have been a far stronger enemy against the United States. Europe would have gone fascist much more rapidly and for a much longer time. World politics would have taken a much more right-wing, pro-fascist, anti-working class trajectory. And 4, and this means that Stalin, the same Stalin who is so viciously lied about and attacked by virtually all official certified Soviet experts, Stephen Kochkin, and in all the world's mass media, Stalin and the Soviet working class saved the world from Nazism and fascism not just once in 1941 to 43 by defeating Hitler's Wehrmacht, but twice. The first time by uncovering and defeating the conspiracies that would have made the Soviet Union into a fascist ally. I also want to spell out some of the implication of my research for the mainstream version of Soviet history of the Stalin period. All the stories of purported crimes of Stalin and crimes of the Soviet Union during the Stalin period are deliberate lies. This is my 6th book in English. I have 3 more books that are not in English, in which I investigate a great many allegations of crimes supposedly committed by Stalin or the Soviet Union during his time. To date, I have not yet found a single actual crime by Stalin or the Soviet Union. Not one. There seems to have been an escalation of anti-Stalin pseudo-scholarly books in recent years. The fall of 2017 saw the publication of Anne Applebaum's book Red Famine, which falsely blamed Stalin for the 1932-33 famine in the Ukraine and adjacent parts of Russia and Kazakhstan. A few weeks later, Volume 2 of Princeton professor Stephen Kotkin's biography of Stalin was published. I have now completed my study of Kotkin's book, which is more than 1,100 pages long. It is an outrageously fraudulent work, full of provable lies. Later this year, I plan to write a short book exposing it. Meanwhile, I heartily recommend to you our own Raj Sakai's takedown of Kotkin, which he gave here as an address and was published recently online in several places. In May or June of this year, 2018, I will publish a book-length study of the so-called Katyn massacre. This is the shooting of between 15 and 22,000 Polish prisoners of war. The anti-communist pro-fascist Polish government allied itself with the German Nazis to blame the Soviet Union for these executions. In 1989 to 1992, Mikhail Gorbachev and Boris Yeltsin stated that, indeed, the Soviet Union and Stalin had ordered these executions. This is false. In plain language, yet another anti-communist lie. My study of the primary source evidence demonstrates how shallow a fraud this story is. And to be honest, I was entirely prepared to discover that the Soviets had shot these Polish prisoners. Instead, I found the opposite. I hope to speak to you about this book in July. Hopefully I'll be back then. I can't think of any other historical period.
Can you stop here for a second?